Hi everybody, it's strangely cool today in the garage. One of the lovely things about Adelaide is that you definitely get a change of season almost to the day. This is autumn weather. It really is. But it's a lovely time of the year with the autumn plants turning their wonderful autumn shades. Yes, happy birthday if you're having a birthday, or happy wedding anniversary, almost the end of the week. Barbie's having a birthday today. We should acknowledge that in the court of public opinion. Barbie, it was 1959, and Barbie makes her debut at the American Toy Fair in New York City. They have made over 1 billion Barbie dolls. And I think, wasn't there a Ken doll, Pete?
Yes.
As well?
Yeah.
What a simple thing. Mattel comes up with a Barbie doll. You know, it's quite, she was, let's not go there. Let's not go there. She was sort of anatomically correct. But children loved it. Oh, I suppose everybody loved Barbie. Kissing in public was banned in Naples. Punishable by death? That's what it says here. It was 1562, however. Adolf Hitler publicly announces the creation of a new air force, which he called the Luftwaffe. That was in 1935. The French leader, Napoleon Bonaparte, only 26 years of age, marries, well, her name was Rose, but Napoleon didn't like that, so he changed it to Josephine. She was 32, he was 26. Italy announces that it is locking down the entire country due to a spike in COVID-19 cases, with 10,040 cases and 860 deaths. The Great Blizzard, now they couldn't have blamed climate change or anything else on that. The Great Blizzard of 1891, it begins in England and lasts until March the 13th. It kills 200 people and 6,000 animals. 1891. Yuri Gagarin, Russian cosmonaut, first man into space. He was born 1934, and Yuri Gagarin has survived all of that, and he was killed in a light plane crash. Not subject to the space program at all. The Beatles begin their first tour, supporting Tommy Rowe and Chris Montez in Britain on this day in 1963. Actress Audrey Hepburn is appointed a UNICEF Special Ambassador. 1988. Menachem Begin, the 6th Prime Minister of Israel. He dies 1992 at the age of 85. 2021, Queen Elizabeth II publicly expresses concern after Harry and Meghan do their interview on American television, saying allegations, including those of racism, will be dealt with privately. Oh, one more. Happy birthday to the Ford Mustang. 1964, the first one is produced. This one down here. Can we get a picture of that, Pete?
Yes, we will.
We'll try. When we sort of get off the reservation, we're sort of slaves to the technology. But I think we can pull that off. This one was made in 1965, a year after the first one made its debut. It's a restored Mustang, hardtop, but lovely, absolutely beautiful. International Women's Day yesterday. By the way, do we have an International Men's Day? Pete, have you ever heard of that?
I haven't heard of one, no.
No, I haven't either. No, I don't think there is an International Men's Day. We have a Minister for Women's Affairs. I know that. That's Katie Gallagher. I don't think there is a Minister for Men's Affairs. Be most appropriate, of course, in Canberra, I would imagine.
That would be discrimination, wouldn't it?
Well, of course it would be. You've got, when you look at the list here, you've got a Minister for Aboriginal Affairs, but we don't have a Minister for White Affairs. It's a very strange thing how in the pursuit of fairness and equality and equity, we can be so blatantly prejudiced and one-sided. And then, of course, think of it as a virtue. Let me blow the bags of South Australia here for 1 second. We are very proud of the state of South Australia, and particularly when we beat the Victorians and everyone else around the entire nation. The country's best hot cross buns, vanilla slices and sausage rolls were all awarded dozens of different categories. The Baking Association of Australia held its annual Victorian Baking Show over the weekend, this one just gone by, crowned the winners in numerous categories, all sorts of breads and pastries and sweets. A panel of judges sampled, golly, 590 baked goods from 143 Aussie bakeries all over the whole country. And I have with great pride to tell you that South Australian entrant Banana Boogie in Belair, I hope you guys will forgive me, but congratulations. I've never heard of Banana Boogie in Belair. It says here it's in South Australia's southeastern foothills. It's taken out the title of the best hot cross bun in the country. The best hot cross bun. The bakery scored first and second place for its traditional hot cross buns, filled with fruit. I know it's strange, they start selling hot cross buns in Adelaide, probably all over Australia, somewhere around about Boxing Day. Very strange. Interest rates, you would know by now, are up 0.25%, as predicted and as widely expected. That's the 10th increase. The Reserve Bank, while doing an unpopular job, is nevertheless doing its job. It's fighting inflation, which is the number one enemy. And if you don't believe me, just think Zimbabwe. Inflation must be kept under control. Well, we've got to get it under control, then keep it under control. And we've also got to keep spending under control and government spending under control. But if you think 3.6% interest is a lot, have some sympathy for those of us who survived the Keating era and interest rates of 22%. Also, just sort of confirming that we learn, the one thing we learn from history is that we learn nothing from history. The last time interest rates were 3.6%, it was back in 2012. Julia Gillard was the Prime Minister. So for those who have a mind for these things, Whitlam, Hawke, Keating, Rudd, Gillard, Rudd, Albanese, high interest rates, high inflation, higher government spending, higher taxation. Is there a pattern here? Could just be a coincidence. Could be. The value of Australian crops, another good news story. Australian crops reached $90 billion in value. $90 billion. Grain growers are earning $665,000 a year on average. Cattle raisers about $400,000 a year. Farmers are having a good time, ladies and gentlemen, by and large, but they deserve it because they work hard, very hard. I had a great weekend last weekend, just gone by. I'm the very proud patron of the All British Day, which is held up at the Oval at Echunga, which is a beautiful little town in the Adelaide Hills. A record number of British cars. There were some modern ones, some veterans, some vintage and some classic cars, all of them pampered beautifully restored and looked after, treasured, quite clearly. It was a little bit damp, but it was All British Day, and I suppose that's something that's kind of synonymous with Britain, isn't it? Being a little bit damp. It's going to be an even bigger show next year. They hope to have a world record number of cars. I think up there on Sunday there was about 180 or 200. They're going for a larger number next year. And also it is next year the 100th anniversary of MG. Up there on Sunday there were plenty of MGs, but I imagine there's going to be a bigger rollout next year. Very important year for MG. I don't know who makes them now. They're certainly not the sports cars. I think they're made in China.
Made in China.
They are made in China, yeah. Yeah, never driven in one, but there's a can we take a picture of it?
The TF, yes.
The TF? That's down there. Pete, what do you reckon is the most popular karaoke song?
The Gambler.
No. No, not The Gambler. But that's a good song.
Yeah.
Who did The Gambler?
Kenny Rogers.
Kenny Rogers, yes. Kenny Rogers. You can take a picture of Kenny over there.
Okay.
We had him in the studio. He didn't bring his guitar or anything. He was a great guest. No, the answer is Frank Sinatra. My Way. Frank Sinatra's My Way.
Okay.
It was Paul Anka who wrote the English words. He didn't write the song, but he wrote the English words. But it was a French song originally. Speaking of French songs, did you ever hear Lucille Starr singing the French song? Pete, you know it?
No, I don't.
It is just absolutely beautiful. In fact, if we were on radio right now, I'd play it for you. It's one of the prettiest songs ever. Lucille Starr sings it in French, Canadian French, and her backing group is the Canadian Sweethearts. I think they had a couple of hits, but the French song was just lovely, just beautiful. Lucille Starr, the French song. Quand le soleil dit bonjour au monde, something or other. Pretty, 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 pretty. A little bit of mail here. Ken says, Jeremy, your story about the Winnebago, you know, I was telling you about the Darwin Awards and the Winnebago. You've got to, take yourself out of the human gene pool through your own stupidity before you breed, and you can enter the Darwin Awards and maybe win. And the guy who drove the Winnebago over the cliff won one particular year. Anyway, Ken says, the story might be right. Of course it's right. Would I lie to you? No, it's right. Because Ken says, when you rent or buy a Winnebago, the handbook tells you, and there is a note, in fact, in front of the driver, which says, do not leave the driver's seat while the vehicle is in motion. Well, yes, it's a pretty sad thing, isn't it, when you have to write that down. Oh dear. The Darwin Awards, you should look them up. They're fascinating. Fascinating. A scary story published in the Sydney Morning Herald predicts that Australia will be invaded and involved in a war with China as soon as 2026. The prediction is based on the fact that China will invade Taiwan and will get dragged into a full-on war because of our alliance with America, allowing the Chinese to legitimately attack and invade mainland Australia. Now, if that was to happen, well, you could say we're in the war because of our alliance. I might argue that we would be saved because of that alliance. I don't know what we would do with the millions of Chinese who are residents in Australia, students, workers, businessmen and women. I got no idea. In normal circumstances, of course, people would be rounded up and they'd be put in detention. But I don't think that would be terribly practical. I mean, first of all, there are far too many. And then, of course, you're putting some of the smartest and best citizens you have in detention. It would be a problem, wouldn't it? A dilemma. We certainly put people in detention in World War II, Japanese, Italians, Germans, of course. But the other thing this story shows up, and I'm looking at it now, is the terrible state of unpreparedness that we find ourselves in. We don't have a large enough standing army, literally, to defend ourselves. And you only have to talk to some Aboriginal people to tell you, they'll tell you that if you can't defend your borders, you will lose your country. We don't have a big enough army. We don't have any national service. We don't even have cadets in schools. Talk about being asleep at the wheel. We need a strong, well-trained reserve. That's what we need. I doubt if we could defend this country for longer than 10 minutes if the Americans were not standing beside us cheek to jowl. I want to talk to you quickly about the superannuation backflip that the government announced. They're spending an awful lot of time and energy trying to talk it down. You could call it a backflip or a lie. It's going to be almost impossible. This is what I heard on The Insiders the other day. Listen to this. It's going to be almost impossible for the government to come back and talk about tax reform for a long time if they don't get this across the line. Okay? Now, I think that's rubbish. Rubbish. It is always easy to talk about tax reform. Always. As long as you are truly reforming it and not getting caught with your hand in the cookie jar, just simply increasing taxes and adding to the tax burden is not reform. Tax reform doesn't always have to mean tax increases, but in the government book, of course, it does. Absolutely. Tax reform is always tax increases. I don't care what they say. They will, if they can tough this one out, they will go after negative gearing, and they will go after franking credits. Wait and see. And again, I say to you, the simple thing is to live within your means and to cut your coat according to the cloth. In South Australia, you know, not a happy story, but we happen to have the highest electricity costs in the country, the whole country. But again, I say to you, it has nothing to do with the war in Ukraine. I hear that so often. It has to do with government policy and the pursuit of renewables when we happen to be blessed with an abundance of natural advantages, natural resources for all. No excuse under the sun for high electricity costs. We should not be paying overseas prices for our electricity. If we put up with it, we deserve it. The media, well, never mentions it, never asks a question about it, never points it out. I don't think the media is doing a particularly good job at the moment. But the Court of Public Opinion will, while I don't know how many people we reach, will continue to bang away with the things that we think are important. And I thank you for all the comments you come in with, time and time again. Thanks for viewing. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton is with us, and the Court of Public Opinion will be back tomorrow. Believe in yourself.